So it's the final part of the Americas triple header. No signs of tiredness here. We bound full pelt through the paddock gates of Interlagos in time for round 21 of the Formula One season in 2024. We are here in Sao Paulo for what will be the 51st World Championship Grand Prix to take place in Brazil. And what a city Sao Paulo is. Traffic jams everywhere you look, skyscrapers, and then in the middle here at Interlagos is one of the great tracks on the Formula One calendar. 2.67 miles. It's a short lap. It's full throttle for nearly 59% of the lap. It undulates, goes up, down by about 43 metres and 15 turns officially, although there is a 1.2 kilometre blast from turn 12 to turn 1 that you take at full throttle. The tyre compounds have changed from last year. We've gone a step softer, C5, C4, C3, and in turn we've also got a new track surface here as well. The track has been completely resurfaced. It's something of an unknown for the teams. Track temperatures about to go through the roof because the sun is out. It's a sprint weekend. We've only got one practice session. We've got a championship now in the constructors that is very much a three-way battle, and after their recent victories, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc have forced their way into the reckoning a bit in the Drivers' Championship as well. I am so pumped up for this weekend, Bernie Collins and Karun Chandok. I can't begin to describe it.
I love coming here. I love everything about coming to Interlagos. You walk in, you feel the sense of history. It's not one of these, new shiny buildings that's just popped out of somewhere. It is a circuit which has soul and history and brilliant racing that we've seen in the past.
Soul, good word, absolutely. Everyone who comes here, Bernie, has Formula One running through their veins, quite frankly.
And you can see it there, that flyover that you see in the city. We're buried in the middle of the city here. You can feel it all around you when you're coming into the track, and you can see the fans trying to get in through the gates at the same time as we're trying to get in through the gates, and still coming over to the commentary box, people filling up the grandstands and taking their pictures of brilliant view of turn 1 as we're walking up here. So yeah, lots to look out for in this session.
Franco Colapinto's sister, who has never ever seen Franco live in the track, is actually going to be watching this first practice session just along on the balcony by our commentary boxes, because she really wants to see her brother take part. And she's not the only one. There's a lot of Argentine supporters here. It is the closest race that Franco will have this year to his city of birth, Buenos Aires, which is a mere 1,250 miles away from Interlagos, but he's a very popular man in these parts. Ferrari have been popular in the Americas, winning the last 2 races. I think they feel this weekend, though, that McLaren could have a renewed vigour to their performance on the track, and Red Bull possibly feel they're still struggling, certainly with race pace, and that's Max Verstappen's biggest complaint, I think, at the moment, away from all the penalties and the off-track chat that's been going on. There still isn't the pace he wants in that car.
I think he's going to be doing the rain downs, isn't he? The whole of the Red Bull team, they haven't really uncovered truly where the performance has gone since, you'd have to say, since Miami. McLaren and this guy Lando Norris have had the upper hand in terms of pure pace, and this is a weekend where we're expecting some rain at various points. It often happens here, and I think Red Bull and Max will be hoping for that.
Sunday could be wetter than a fisherman's boot, if you believe the weather forecast, Bernie.
The forecast is notoriously bad around here because we're in the middle of these 2 lakes. It just sort of builds up the rain here. It's quite hard to see on the radar. We've had many years the forecast is wrong, and actually speaking to people in the pit lane, that's already causing some issues, because how much do you trust that forecast? Are you saving tyres for Sunday, or are you believing the forecast that Sunday's going to be wet? In my view, at this stage of the weekend, you can't trust the forecast 3 days away.
In which case, then, we will see how that develops. We also have Ollie Behrman. You'll have seen him in the car, replacing Kevin Magnussen for today. Get well soon, Kevin. He's not feeling particularly great, so he's not taking part today, which means Ollie Behrman will qualify for the sprint and will race in the sprint tomorrow. Now, Kevin can come back for qualifying for the Grand Prix and race in the Grand Prix, but I would imagine that's going to be unlikely, given that Ollie will have had 3 sessions by then, and why put, even if he is the full-time race driver in, if he's not been out on the track this weekend.
And it's a shame for Kevin, because he's come off the back of 2 really strong weekends in Austin and Mexico, where he looked really like he's finally sort of unlocked whatever was missing in terms of what he needs from the car. Look at those patches down there. The car's bouncing along.
It's a bit bumpy, isn't
on this new surface. Do you see that? Just the way
it?
There's Gasly in the Alpine coming down the straight, just bouncing along there. But yeah, it's a shame for Kevin. But in terms of Ollie and Haas, he's going to be racing that car next year. So honestly, if I was Ayo Komatsu, I would just leave him in the car, make the decision now, keep in the car the whole weekend. It's good practice for next year.
Ollie Behrman, the first driver in Formula One history to score points for different constructors in his first 2 Grand Prix. Ferrari, Jeddah 7th, Haas AS Baku 10th. And there is Ollie Behrman on the track, getting the cheers from the crowd as he comes out. One by one, Ted Kravitz, they're all filing out of the pit lane. Good morning to you.
Hello, Crofty. Hello, crew, and hello, Bernie. Hello, everybody from the pit lane. Yes, they certainly are, because this is going to be a fast and frantic first free practice session, as it needs to be on a sprint weekend. So everybody is up for it, just like you are, Crofty, and particularly continuing that alliteration of Fs, so are the Ferrari team. And Crofty, what's Italian for hat-trick? Do you know what it is? It's a tripletta. I love that. A tripletta. Ferrari are on a come here on a tripletta, looking for a series of 3 achievements in a sporting event. They've won Austin, they've won Mexico, and they really want to win here in Interlagos this weekend. It's Charles Leclerc who's particularly motivated after, of course, winning Austin, but Carlos Sainz got the better of him in Mexico, and Leclerc is all out for victory, both in the sprint. He wants to dominate the weekend, Crofty, and based on their performance so far, you'd have to say who can stop them. Well, I tell you who might be able to stop them: Lando Norris in the McLaren. McLaren have got a new rear wing. We're going to show it to you in more depth in this session. It's a piece of art, Crofty. It's absolutely beautiful, and they're hoping it's going to be enough to get them past the Ferraris. We'll see.
Thank you very much indeed, Ted. Great to have you back with us, and we can ride on board the car number 50 for Ollie Behrman, descending down in towards turn 4.
And way past the apex there, understeered past the apex at turn 4. It's trying to work out, Crofty. I don't think he would have raced here before, or driven here, because Formula 2 don't come here. And I don't believe he did an FP1 session here last year, because it was a sprint weekend as well.
Correct. So this is an absolute voyage into the unknown for him this weekend. I'd say no pressure on him, but the way the Haas team are performing at the moment, currently on something of a roll themselves, and, well, they've scored in the last 5 Grand Prix. They're expecting 6 in a row.
Yeah, and they're pushing to close the gap to Aston Martin. They're looking at around 10 points a race weekend they want to get. So they need both cars scoring points, ideally this weekend in the sprint and in the main race. But, you know, as you've seen from Ollie Behrman, he's a master of the stand-in at this stage. I think he's going to be well used to it. And he'll be getting in that car and, like Corinne says, getting to know the track.
Everybody is out on the track apart from Alex Albon. So let's give you a couple of parish notices. Sergio Perez, who's just gone second fastest, has a different chassis to the one that he had in Mexico. He wanted a change of chassis. He didn't feel the one that he had in Mexico was the right one. Is it right to give him a new chassis at this stage of the season?
I think they're rolling the dice a little bit. You've got, you know, 4 weekends, I should say, 5 races, including the sprint. Oh no, I forgot the Qatar sprint. Never mind. We've got 4 weekends to go, Crofty. Let me start again.
That bit is right.
And it's you know, clearly it's a car and a driver who they haven't been working together. They've not been gelling. I spoke to him yesterday in the paddock, and we were talking about this, and he said in Mexico it was really weird. He said for some reason the front left. It just, there was something weird going on the braking there. It was always sort of some sort of instability and lockups. And they just couldn't get around it. They looked at the brakes, they looked at the braking systems, the actual discs and calipers and all of that, the electronics, couldn't see anything on there. And, you know, it's actually a sign of how much Red Bull want to try and support him, because, as Bernie knows, introducing a chassis this late is quite unusual for a team, in a cost cap era as well. It's quite a big thing for a team to be making. It
is a big change for a team to be making midway through a triple header. Sometimes teams will have chassis that they're rotating to get repainted or go back to the factory for various bits of maintenance. So it might be an old chassis that's going back in, or one that he's raced at some other point in the year. They don't tend to run the same chassis all year, even if there's no upgrades to the chassis itself. But yeah, it is an interesting change, and that is the last thing you change. So you will try all of the components that you mentioned on the front corners, and then you'll eventually get the chassis. And just to
Okay, understood.
And he'll be coming in to get that fixed. In fact, he has come back in to get that fixed.
Yeah, I was just saying it's sort of the last thing you change, but there can be manufacturing tolerances in the chassis that, you know, there could be legitimately something wrong with the chassis, but it's very hard for the driver to get that out of their head without actually changing it.
And Max Verstappen. Let's talk about Maxwell. Let's talk about Pierre Gasly first. We've already seen that floor scraping along, and they might need to adjust the ride height a touch on that one, because he's Oh, and did something just fly off the car then as well, even before he went onto the curve?
Yeah.
Not sure.
It often happens, Crofty, with a new surface where, you know, you'd have done your ride-out references and calculations from historical data, but it might be different. And certainly just looking at how much vertical movement we've seen just over the bumps, it does look like the new surface isn't as silky smooth as perhaps people were expecting.
It's been completely resurfaced, then it's been high-pressure washered. So for those like me who need their patio doing at the moment, this is how they do it at Interlagos. They get the high-pressure washers out and they pound the asphalt, and it creates an abrasiveness. The smooth sheen goes. My patio is desperately in need of a wash, Bernie. Don't look at me like that. I've been away for 3 weeks.
I'm just wondering, I'm just imagining you, Crofty, with a power washer in this entire track and thinking how long it might take you.
A while.
I sympathise. I got a text message from my wife saying, we need to get a power washer. The kids have spilled all the Halloween paint all over the patio. So guess what I'm doing when we get back home?
You've got something to come back to there. It's not so much treats as tricks on that one. And now I wanted to talk about Max Verstappen because this is important for the weekend. He's on the track and he is running a new internal combustion engine. And this is another element to the power unit outside of his allocation. Remember, he's already had one 10-place grid penalty this season. Well, he's got a 5-place grid penalty coming then for the Grand Prix. Not the sprint, but for the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen will take a 5-place penalty. We hinted at it in Mexico the minute the engine went wrong there. You can see Max on the track on your screen at the moment. The minute the engine went wrong in Mexico, it was always going to be tight. Red Bull have decided this is a track where you can overtake. We need to change that or get a new engine in, so they've done it. And that can have big ramifications this weekend.
It could, but if they had to do it, this is the best place to do it. You know, this one, along with Spa, are the two easiest tracks for overtaking. It's never easy in Formula One, but in terms of relative ease, this is one of the best ones. So it makes sense. I mean, we've seen, isn't it? 2021, famously, Lewis Hamilton gave them the back to win the Grand Prix on the Sunday.
Last in the sprint, finished 5th in the sprint, had his grid penalty, so he started 10th and then won the Grand Prix that year. 24 passes Lewis Hamilton made on track in both races. Now, Russell Norris out on the top 3. If you want to ride on board with Max Verstappen or any of the drivers, you can. We're currently looking at Sergio Perez, who's on a decent lap and is about to go quickest by nearly 0.2 of a second. There's a QR code to help you. You need your Sky Sports ID. Log in with that. All 20 onboards and the Team Radio 2. And if you're watching on Sky Stream, Sky Glass or Sky Q, or even now, you can press the remote control interactive button.
I think he blocked Pierre Gasly there, Sergio, when we were riding on board. I saw him put his hand up to apologise to Gasly. So we'll see.
It's an easy track to get in people's way here because it is such a short track, and for the pit wall, it must be an absolute nightmare, Bernie Collins, trying to give your driver some clear track position when it comes to qualifying.
It's a really busy track, this one. You know, we're already seeing a 1:12 lap time. That'll continue to fall. So you've got 20 cars in that space. There's not a lot of gap between them. As well as that, I think what Corinne's seen there with Checo and Gasly was you want to get a toe. You want to be very close to the car ahead out of turn 12 when they're finishing their fast lap as you're starting your fast lap. So that's quite hard to engineer, if you like, but every driver will be hoping that their engineers on the pit wall come up with a solution like that. They'll be trying to practice it today. I think Gasly was being towed by Checo out of that turn 12, and then actually Checo wasn't ready for him when he crossed the start-finish line.
But the good news is Checo's hit the ground running, which we never saw in the previous 2 race weekends.
Is that the new chassis?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just looking at the evidence of the lap time, and at no point on any run on any set of tyres did Checo look like he was going to be strong. So it's just a bit of confidence. It's early days, we've got a long weekend ahead, the track surface is going to evolve, etc., etc. But just as a driver, psychologically, when you come back into the pits, that first run, you look at the timesheet and you go, okay, we're in the ballpark here, everyone's had one run, and we're in the window. And that is just psychologically good for a driver.
Just to add to that today, I think we're going to see really, really big track improvement through today. We've got this new surface, it's normally good track improvement anyway.
So with that in mind, I did ask a few teams, like, what's your run plan for this session? You've got one practice session, What are you doing? Trying to get a big long run in? Yeah, what's the game plan here? It's Franco Colapinto making his way. Whoa, and sliding nicely through the S's there. Fantastic. What's your plan for today? And the word I got, 2 words I got back was setup. It's all about setup and giving the drivers confidence in the cars to take into sprint qualifying. Trouble is, when you're trying to work on the best setup, you don't know what that best setup is necessarily going to be on a track that is going to improve as much as this one is by the time you get to the sprint race tomorrow and then Parc Fermé changing again. It's a real headache for the teams and the drivers.
It is. There's a degree of guesstimation in terms of how the track will evolve. And the point you just made about Parc Fermé is a really valid one, because on a sprint weekend, you'll start sprint qualifying and then your setup is locked in for the sprint qualifying and the sprint race. But then you can make changes for Grand Prix qualifying and the Grand Prix. So there is some flexibility, at least for tomorrow in the daytime, to change stuff. But you're absolutely right. You've got to have a certain amount of guesstimation into how the track you think will evolve.
And when I said about long runs, all I got back is, yes, yeah, we're all going to do a long run. It's called the sprint. That's the long run for the teams in terms of preparation for the Grand Prix.
Because I think the sprint is sort of more medium level fuel node, so your setup doesn't need to be that compromise between sprint qualifying and the sprint itself. The qualifying that we have on Saturday afternoon to the race on Sunday, that's a much bigger job for trying to set up. It needs to be much more balanced between the two of those.
Ollie Behrman goes 11th fastest, just over a second off the pace. He's making his way through to the Senna S's now, which is exactly, I think, where Damon Hill has gone a wandering. Morning, champ.
Yes, good morning, David, and everyone up in the commentary box. I didn't wander. I rode our cameraman's bicycle over here, which was the only way of getting across across the short distance we have to travel, but from the TV compound. But it's a great view I've got. I mean, the Senna S, obviously famous for the circuit because of Ayrton Senna, but it's actually called after Jose Carlos Pache, who I had the sad pleasure of meeting when I was a kid, not long before, unfortunately, he died in a plane crash. So that's why this circuit is called after the greats from Brazil, and they love their motor racing drivers here. And this is, of course, a wonderful spot to watch with the perfect S for Senna there, as I see the cars coming down through this sequence. I think that's George, but they're obviously warming up for another run. They've had their first run. I haven't been able to see the times, but everything looks pretty smooth and not particularly anything to worry about. I guess they're all just playing their hands at the moment. We've got a fantastic... I have to be careful not to drop my microphone into a car coming out of the pit lane exit, because I'm actually right on top of them here, but you get a fantastic look right inside the cockpit. And that was Lewis getting a bit squirrely there through the S's on the exit of the first turn. So that's... I think that's Valtteri in the States. Sauber, but now another flurry of cars coming out. I've heard that if that was Checo, I was told that he may have got a new chassis, or not a new chassis, but he's a change of chassis. So it'll be interesting to see whether he thinks it's any better as I watch Carlos Sainz going right underneath me. The track, you can tell it's much darker than it used to be, and of course I would burn my hand if I took my hand on this track. The sun is very strong out here, but so the tyres will be getting extra heat through them, and we'll be interested to see how that unfolds during the weekend. So back to you up there with all the information.
Thanks ever so much indeed, Damon. 53 degrees track temperature. We're 800 metres above sea level and therefore closer to the sun. And it's going up all the time. I don't know if that would burn your hand or not.
I do love Damon. we had a very funny conversation yesterday on the bus, but I said to him, do you remember how you lost the 95 Brazilian Grand Prix? At that point where he's standing, when the gearbox sees, and you're leading ahead of him like a Schumacher. No recollection.
No, you tend to erase that sort of thing out of your mind, Karun. Do you know what? There's a part of me who wants him to drop his microphone into the cockpit of one of the cars. Think of the onboard commentary we would get, especially from the likes of Charles Leclerc, who's on a bit of a flyer. Max Verstappen, who's gone quickest in the middle sector, just radioed in, Max, to say, look, we need to take that flap out. It's whatever we've tried so far isn't working. But he has just gone quickest by nearly a tenth of a second from George Russell. A lot of Ferrari fans here willing on Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Leclerc, who's only been off the podium once in the last 7 races, and as you would expect, because he's an extremely popular man here, many Lewis Hamilton fans, and he will be driving one of Ayrton Senna's old cars on Saturday after qualifying as well, which is a terrific thrill for him and everyone here.
Yeah, I really hope the weather holds up. And there's a Ferrari dawdling.
That's Carlos Sainz
on the race line. So Sainz trying to get a gap to Leclerc in front, and Lewis ended up going past. So Lewis has aborted this lap. Has Sainz also aborted? Yeah, I think he's crawling around behind him. So that was a big message. Lewis, I mean, okay, he's going to practice the pit entry here, but yeah, it's just a bit messy. Bernie, I wanted to ask you a question about the two RBs, because they seem to be the only two who started running on a set of the soft tyres. Why do you think they've done that? Because that's a tyre that we haven't used here in recent years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one step softer than we had in previous years, so there's a bit of a risk that that tyre in the very hot track temperatures is actually a struggle to keep under control. I think we've seen this a little bit. Do you want to talk through this replay, Croft, or are you happy for me to keep going?
Carlos Sainz was definitely trying to build a gap at Sao. Whether he'd been warned that Lewis Hamilton was coming or not, I'm not quite sure. And he was looking in his mirrors and probably felt that he was far enough over, but I get the feeling Lewis might disagree somewhat on that one. But no one touched, no harm done. Back to you.
Yeah, so just saying, the medium tyre is the one that most people are preferring to run. They've got 4 sets of that medium tyre for this weekend. If we look ahead to the race weekend, to the race itself, what I'm expecting is a medium and a hard 2-stop race. So how many mediums do we need for that? We're not sure. Potentially 2 or 2 hards. Then for the sprint, they probably need another medium. I think the soft is going to be too soft for that. So we've probably used about 3 mediums by the time we get to there. And they obviously need 2 mediums for this afternoon's sprint qualifying, for Q1 and Q2 in the sprint qualifying. So there's quite a few mediums need to be used at some point during the weekend. I think we've also seen from RB in particular in the past that they've actually finished this session on a medium, because that's what they run in sprint Q1.
Yeah.
And that sets them up the best for that sprint Q1, because it's the closest track condition to what they're going to get in the sprint qualifying this afternoon. And, you know, a team like them, potentially at times that have struggled to progress through the sessions, it is about getting set up for that final session. So there's maybe a bit to play with there for them.
I think they're going to use 2 intermediates and a wet on Sunday.
I'm not so confident. So to put it in perspective, Crofty, I have 2 outfits lined up for Sunday, a wet and a dry. I am not totally committed that it's going to be wet on Sunday.
You brought your wellies, Ted Kravitz?
No, I have some waterproof shoes.
Good lad.
Which I did bring, actually. I have the option of the dry shoes, and I brought the waterproofs, because this is Brazil and anything can happen. Right, anything is happening. Lots of is happening in the pits. Down at McLaren, Emerson Fittipaldi, not his grandson Enzo. Emerson Fittipaldi, a McLaren legend, is watching the action from the back of the McLaren pits, which is quite a cool thing to see, while they're changing the front suspension, and I think maybe a associated ride height change on Lando Norris's car. I think you're looking at Oscar Piastri's at the moment, but on the left-hand side, Lando Norris's car, they're just finishing a front suspension change. And there's lots of that going on. People seeing how the new track surface is affecting the cars and lowering or raising ride heights accordingly. I'm just trying to get some details on the confirmation for Max taking his 6th engine when you're only allowed 4 in a year. I haven't got the official FIA parish notice, Crofty, although I'm trying to get the same confirmation that you're having from different sources. But what I have noticed, along with that Checo Perez new chassis, is that he's still running a bit of the floor that's different to Max Verstappen's. There's not much performance in it. It's just the way that it's worked out. But yeah, Checo's floor continues to be a little bit different to Verstappen's. But that'll be amazing if, when it's confirmed that Max has taken a 5-place grid penalty for the race on Sunday for a 6th power unit. When has a championship been won with 2 separate engine power units being incurred? It's testament to how he can recover from those penalties and able to do it when needs must.
That is very true. Yet nothing official from the FIA yet, just the sources that I was talking to before this practice session all told me Max was definitely getting an internal combustion engine. He said it yesterday in the press conference. He was definitely doing it at some stage between now and Abu Dhabi. And yeah, put 2 and 2 together. It's here. We'll get confirmation at some stage from the FIA. But they can't confirm it until he's been out the garage, and he has been out the garage now for 20 minutes, so get on with it, please. Max Verstappen with the 1:11.7, with the fastest time so far. George Russell and Sergio Perez. Here's the man that's 23rd and last in the Drivers' Championship. 20 cars on the grid for every race, and Valtteri Bottas is 23rd and last. And I think that is a real shame for a driver with immense talent driving a car that is not giving him anywhere near the performance that he needs to show what he can do.
Let's have a look at Yuki Tsunoda before we come back to Bottas at 10. I wonder if he touched the grass, Crofty, on the left with the rear left tyre.
Potentially.
Because you sometimes see that, because your eye line is looking to the right into the apex. No, just a bit of rear instability there. So, yeah, he'd done a personal best sector 1, and then that explains why the lap was
Sauber
aborted.
haven't finished higher than 14th in any of the last 10 Grand Prix. And as for Valtteri Bottas, he has never been pointless at this stage of the season in his Formula 1 career. Even in his rookie year with Williams, he'd scored points before now.
They've had an appalling season. Yeah. There's no sugarcoating that as a team, Sauber. I mean, they've just completely, it seems, lost their way. You know, they've just fallen off the back of the whole pack by some margin. Yeah, real shame for them.
Yeah, and I think Bottas is one of the fittest people on the grid. He's always out cycling. You know, he's really trying hard there. But the team got over their pit stop fiascos at the start of the year that was really hampering them. But yeah, the car development just doesn't seem to have progressed in a way that's getting them anywhere close to having points. And like you say, Crofty, being 23 in a 20-car championship is pretty poor statistic.
What will that be like, Bernie, for people, you know, on the pit wall where you've been and in the garage, like for the engineering team, you know, just to explain to people at home before I ask you the question, is you got basically two kind of groups, haven't you? You've got the people back at the factory doing the R&D, doing the design, manufacturing the bits, and then you've got the race team who are effectively the operators of what's produced. I mean, it must be a pretty demoralizing place for the pit wall.
Yeah, it's pretty, you know, it is demoralizing. They're always trying their hardest. Of course, everybody is. You know that the people at the factory are trying their hardest. You get to the race weekend, particularly, you know, in my previous position of strategy, and you can't do anything about car performance. You're just trying to come up with the best solution that you can. And, you know, in my opinion, the guys and girls at that lowest, you know, Sauber, they actually probably work harder over a race weekend than the people in the winning team, because you're changing more bits, you're trying more things, there's, you know, more tests to be done. And, you know, even from the engineering point of view, what can you come up with? What's the magic bullet? How can you try and get out of this situation? More feedback to the factory. So definitely, I think that those teams, the groups at the track and at the factory, it's really hard work, and like you say, pretty demoralising at times.
Yep. As much of a thrill as it is to work in this sport, you want some success from time to time, and success has been few and far between for Valtteri Bottas, for Zhou Guanyu and for Sauber this season. By the way, Valtteri Bottas, the only driver other than Max Verstappen to have won multiple sprint races in his career. Max has won 11 of the 16 sprints that we've ever had. Welcome back to Interlagos. Official confirmation from the FIA that Max Verstappen has a new internal combustion engine in his Red Bull. He will have a 5-place grid penalty for the Grand Prix on Sunday. A Grand Prix on Sunday for which the Haas team will be chasing a 6th scoring race in a row. Io Komatsu is their team principal. He's with us this weekend. What a transformation, Io, this season has been. Congratulations, because your team are on a proper roll at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a huge team effort. The upgrade's been working and we're making the car go faster, and then both drivers are driving really well last couple of races. So yeah, it's been really good fun.
So lots of success there. You're doing a brilliant job, but you couldn't keep Kevin Magnussen 100% fit. We wish him all the best. How is he, and what's the problem?
Yeah, he didn't feel very well yesterday, and I was hoping that was going to improve overnight, but he actually got worse. He has a nausea, sickness, so yeah, he wasn't in a fit state to drive today. So yeah, I was really looking forward for Kevin to drive here, because last 2 races been fantastic, and then this is the track he really likes and goes well. So I was hoping that we can build on from that, but yeah, unfortunately it is what it is. But all is in the car, and you know how good he is. So yeah.
I was saying a little bit earlier that if I was you, you've got Ollie in the car for, we know, the first 3 sessions of the weekend, sprint qualifying and the sprint race. It would seem logical to me that you keep him in the car, because he's going to have the mileage through the weekend, coming into the Grand Prix qualifying and the race itself. Why wouldn't you do that? Just because, you know, he's obviously going to be the one with everything underneath him this weekend.
I love your question, Karen. No, honestly, we just see how it goes. I'm just no need to commit to something we don't need to commit to, that's all. But I'm sure Ori will do a very, very good job.
Io, it's Bernie. Just to bring it back to what's happening on track now a little bit this weekend. I'm not going to push on Berman anymore, because Corinne's already done that. But new track surface here. We've been talking a lot about it in the commentary box. Looks pretty dark, so the temperatures are quite high, and it looks pretty bumpy out there. What are your guys telling you about the track that maybe is unexpected or is going to bring a new element to this weekend?
Yeah, I think in terms of tyre performance, it's not too far from what we expected, but biggest surprise is this bumpiness. Nico's particularly vocal about it. It's actually worse than 23, so it definitely hasn't got better, it's worse.
And Io, just finally, I know you're a busy man this weekend, but you've got a direct link to us. Noon, Brazil time, Saturday, Coventry away at Middlesbrough. Do you want us to keep you up to date with a match? Will you be watching on your Sky Go? How are you going to follow that one?
I think I just focus on my job. So yeah, I think Coventry will be too much of a distraction, so I'll do my job.
I'll tell you what, I'll do you a deal. If they score, I'll just send you a message. How's that?
Thank you.
Anytime. Io Komatsu with us all weekend long. Massive Coventry City fan, and if you didn't see the piece last week from Mexico with Io, it was an absolute gem to see him celebrating all the goals as he went back to see his team and meet George Boateng, his football hero as well.
He's just a massive sports fan, isn't he? He used to play rugby. He was at Paris at the Olympics supporting his friend in the rock climbing. I think she won the gold medal as well. So he's just he's just a sports fan. You know, I often see him at Wilton Miller, the go-kart track, out there with his kids driving around, and he's actually a good peddler himself.
He's not bad. I was
right, he's still bad.
Oh dear. I was at F1 Drive, fabulous facility that is, underneath the pitch at Spurs at the Tottenham Stadium, with Kevin and with Nico, and Io turned up and he said, I want to have a go as well, and he wasn't that far off the professional race drivers. It's a long way faster than me, but that was another point. I had too much downforce, I think. Wrong setup on that one. Talking of setup, while we were watching the Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso, they've gone back to a floor that looks very much like the floor they had in Suzuka, because 6 months worth of upgrades have not improved that car much. So it's not exactly the same, but it's a slightly, it's not a copy, but it looks like that floor, and it should act like that floor, and it should go better here, they hope, than Mexico, which was another poor weekend.
Well, first things first, Crofty, we're not blaming setup for your performance in the karting, so we're not taking that from an engineering point of view. Unfortunately, I don't know who was engineering you that day, but let's not blame it on setup. Yeah, and that's really disappointing as a team to keep bringing upgrades. Recently I was speaking to someone and they were saying there's so much performance in the floor this year. So it's all about getting new floors to the car, improving it gradually throughout the year. And to have not been doing that because the guys in the garage will be fitting new floors, trying it out, trying different ride heights, doing all these tests in P1. We see them run all the aero rakes that they were running last week in P1. So you're trying to get the answers on these floors, and then to realise the answer is actually to go back to the Suzuka one, it doesn't bode well for what's coming out of the design office or what's coming out of the wind tunnel. So they'll definitely be trying to get on top of that, because it's not only important for this year, it's important for next year and the year after. And they do need to be progressing because, like we've said, Haas are coming for them.
They certainly are. But Fernando Alonso currently 4th fastest, Ted Kravitz.
And well, which is something that we should underline. Hasn't been at the circuit yesterday, Thursday, so arrived this morning, and I saw him breeze through the paddock and looked great. He had what we would call a sort of funny tummy, but what Aston Martin called an intestinal infection. Crofty, I think that's what they described it as. Yeah, TMI, too much information. But he went back to Europe to get it treated with his regular doctor team, and actually flew back. So because there's only a 3-hour time difference from Europe, he's not suffering from jet lag, feels fine, and is glad to be back in the car. They've been making some various setup changes to the car. You've already talked about the return to some of the previous parts on that Aston Martin. Lance Stroll just changed a heave spring, the part of the front suspension in his car. And we should say there is another new addition to the Fernando Alonso side of the garage Aston Martin family. We have to say congratulations to #1 mechanic Mikey Brown and his partner on the arrival of Sebastian, baby Sebastian.
Oh.
No, not Sebastian Vettel, though Mikey Brown did engineer, or he did mechanic, #1 mechanic Sebastian Vettel. But Seb Brown, welcome to the world. Lovely new addition for Mikey and his other half.
Oh, congratulations, Mum and Dad. Top lad is Mikey on that one. Well done to them. And congratulations, by the way, Lance Stroll this weekend, who makes his 164th start in Formula One, therefore becoming the most experienced Canadian driver ever to race in Formula One.
It was his birthday this week as well. Did I read that?
He was 26, wasn't he, this weekend? Yes, Tuesday.
God, he's young. Makes me feel old.
Did you get an invite to the party?
I did not. No, I did
Forgets
not.
what you did for him for all those years.
I don't think he has. He speaks very favourably to me when I speak to him in the paddock, so I don't think he has forgotten. He just not a social occasion for me. That's okay.
You were busy elsewhere.
I was busy. That's fine.
That is the intense focus there of Dr. Helmut Marko keeping an eye on proceedings at the back of the Red Bull garage, for whom Max Verstappen still has the fastest time by 4/100ths of a second from Lewis Hamilton, and Sergio Perez currently 5th fastest. But I wonder where his thoughts are. His thoughts looking a bit at Liam Lawson, at Yuki Tsunoda, the future of RB, and potentially Red Bull as well.
Franco Colapinto maybe in that equation.
That as well, yes.
Yeah, I was just looking at.
Although my understanding on that is that Franco Colapinto is not in discussion with RB. He might be talking to Carlos Slim a little bit about some future funding. But watch this space with Franco Colapinto, because things might happen in the near future on that one in terms of his potential appearance on the grid in 2025.
I'm going to do a Nico Rosberg and say, you know something, obviously, Crofty. Why don't you tell us?
I don't know anything other than after Vegas.
You can't just drop that clanger in and not tell us.
I'm telling you, after
just
Vegas.
friends. It's just two of, Bernie and I here. We're just hanging
nobody
out.
else is listening, just us.
Just you two. No, I've no idea where he's going, but
fine.
It's an interesting period for Franco Colapinto at the moment, who, to be fair, has created this interest by driving superbly well in his races so far in Formula One.
I just had a message from someone in the paddock to say that it is a previously used chassis for Perez rather than a brand new one.
I think that's what I said.
I'm just confirming it.
Are you messaging each other in here?
Yeah. Karoo.
Well, he's not telling me about where Franco Colapinto is going to be racing in 25.
I don't know where Franco Colapinto is going to be racing. Good toe for Esteban Ocon, he says, changing the subject. Yeah, things might develop after Vegas, that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I shall be watching from home in Vegas.
It's not always what happens in Vegas. What Verstappen's in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's Frankie baby as well.
Look at how busy the track is out there now at the minute. There's only Russell in the pit lane, and there's a lot of jostling for position, trying to get that gap, but also try and get the toe down the start-finish straight.
grip levels seem to be ish, I think, at the moment.
Well, just looking at the lap times, right? They've done an 11.7. I know F1 has moved on a lot from when we were
That's
here
what we had last year.
12 months ago, but it's the same lap time. So if you factor in, we haven't yet seen the soft tyre, but guess what? This medium was a soft last year, so it's a like for like. But you'd have to say the cars have improved probably 6-7 tenths year on year. You know, if you look at the percentage terms, more circuits, 6-7 tenths for the circuit, for the car, but we haven't seen that lap time improvement. So, you know, they might be running more fuel on the medium tire here. So there's a few caveats, but yeah, in terms of the surface itself, I think IO is confirming, wasn't it? The grip is okay. It's just the bumps that seem the issue.
When was the 111 last year?
FP1 11.
Yeah,
11,
so
7.
having a look at the lap time profile, if we like, last year, and as you've mentioned, Karun, we do have the soft tyre for the majority still to come. Between P1, the end of P1, obviously we've got...
Watch Lewis Hamilton here, by the way. This is heading towards Magulio and Jun Sao. And just finding that there's no room past Lando Norris there. He was about to start a lap himself.
And that would have compromised Lewis's run, because you do need a good clean run through Jun Sao. He's gone wide at turn 4 anyway. But you do need a good clean run through Jun Sao to get the, you know, the speed up the hill and down the straight. You need to kind of treat that corner as being a part of your next push lap.
And he was struggling for grip there through Tocido de Largo, the turn 4, and Pinarino turn 9, where he had something of a slide. Bernie, we interrupted you. I apologise.
That's okay. It's not a problem. Yeah, what I was just going to say, from the end of P1, we've still got 20 minutes left of P1, so still track improvement to come in this session. From the end of P1 to Q1 in the sprint Q1 last year, so across today, we've seen 1.9 seconds quicker lap times.
Yep.
Some of that is fuel, but that's significant improvement, I think, still to come through the end of this session and into that Q1. And I think what's happening, just when you comment on Hamilton there, he thought that the McLaren in front was going to go for a lap as well. So I think people are actually doing double cool laps, and then as the second car in that, it's hard to predict that the car ahead is going to go and start a lap or not.
Sainz improved in the first sector, personal best, but then had a wobble on the entry to turn 10. A bit like we saw from Tsunoda, and that's reflected in the lap time we see there now. So he's lost half a second or so just in the middle sector.
Some of the most beautiful corner names on the planet.
They are.
Here at Interlagos, that don't need to be ruined by a turn 10, young Mr. Chandok. Bico de Pato.
I'll stick with my numbers. The numbers are the same everywhere.
That's the duckbill.
The duckbill corner.
Yeah, okay. No, you are right. I often chastise Anthony Davidson for using corner numbers like these engineers who suck the fun out of Formula One. So I will come back to using corner names.
Yeah, fun sponge.
I just don't know what to say to that. Formula One would be nothing without the engineers. Nothing.
But we'd have corner names.
Yeah.
We have
might
corner
not have cars
numbers.
to go around them.
We have corner. Imagine me trying to say the names that you're saying. I just wouldn't get the words out.
We can practice.
We've been practicing all
okay,
week.
we'll practice.
All week long on that one, to be honest. I thought you were going to say, where would Formula One be without numbers? Here's a number for George Russell. P1. And P1 by some margin on the soft compound tyre. A 1:10.7. So a 1:10.7 was the fastest time in Q3 last year. Max Verstappen. We're only in FP1 here at the moment, but we're onto the soft tyres there with George Russell.
And he found 1.1 seconds. Some of them might be fuel, but he found 1.1 seconds between his previous best on the medium to the soft.
So soft tyres will be going on, lap times will be coming down, and watching from the side of the track, let's go back to Champ. Damon.
Ah, David, yes, goody. They're going to put the soft tyres on. I can't wait. This is such a great place to watch. I'm down at, I'm glad you mentioned the names of the corners, because I'm down here at 6, 7, going into 8. But the romantics among you will prefer the name of Ferradura and Laranjal. I think that's Spanish accent, sorry. In Portuguese, they've got much more
Portuguese, was
extended
So we're
No,
boxes
so
lap,
they got
attack
much
the
more
entry, will
extended
come
vowels
down
in
through.
Portuguese, haven't they? There's lots of vowel sounds. I was watching the Teach Yourself Portuguese. I flew out on a Portuguese airline and they were teaching. I went on the channel which tried to teach you Portuguese. It's the most impenetrable language. I cannot get my tongue around some of these vowels. But anyway, when they say hill in Portuguese, it comes out as hill. So, as Ted well knows. So, here we are in Ferradura, I think it is, and Laranjol or something like that. And it's a beautiful part of the track because they come up the hill towards this grandstand. These lucky people sitting here watching this corner, and as I watch the Red Bull come into and out of 6 Ferradura, that's Max, is it? And he's not on it yet, I don't think, but when they're on it, they come through this entry. There used to be a massive bump in there, and I was interested to hear that that Bernie said it's bumpy, but it doesn't look bumpy from where I am. It looks much smoother than it ever was. The car used to fishtail as you came up the hill towards Ferradura and then bounce around all the way through it, and you'd hang on really fast, and then you crest when you get to the top and the car gets light. So I get a fantastic view here of the back of the cars as they go into Laranjal, and you can see them squirming. And there's this wonderful feeling you get as you nail it into Laranjal and the car gets really light and very, very slidey, and you have to gingerly make your way through that part of the corner as you get into that infield section. The rest of the corners, whose names I can't remember, but David, you know them all beautifully. But those corners are fantastic, very fiddly and quite annoying because you want to get moving and you feel like you're spending forever going nowhere. But it's a great little track, this one, and it produces great racing, and I'm very privileged to be standing here by the side of it watching these guys work. I've seen, I think the guy that impressed me most so far, I think, was Oscar, and Lewis also managed to change up when he came out of Ferradura, which is the only person I've heard do that. So he's got through Ferradura a bit quicker and needed to go up a gear before he dropped down into Laranjal. The Ferrari also looks great, as you'd expect. But that's all I have to report for you guys, and thanks for sending me down to Ferradura, Horseshoe Corner.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, champ. Possibly the best Portugueser out on the track today. Well done, Damon Hill, and his pronunciations. George Russell's the only one who's put the soft tyres on in the last 15 minutes or so, and he's fastest currently by nearly a second. And the others still working on setup and still pounding around on these medium tyres. This is lap 14 for this set for Max Verstappen. You can see a few little dark patches on the inside there starting to form. Is this rear tyres or front tyres? You have to watch here.
Corinne's pointing at me. I'm not actually quite that sure, but I think it's a combination. What are you thinking, Corinne?
I think the front tyres do take a bit of a beating in this middle sector of the lap. You've got long corners, but the rears take a hit when it comes to traction out of places like Junsao. I think you need really you put a lot of energy through the rear axle, 1,000 horsepower, trying to accelerate up the hill. So it kind of feels like it's overall all 4 take a hit here. It's not like in China, for example, where it's one axle clearly over the rest.
Yeah, and I think this year, as we said a few times, we have the softer combines. We've actually got 1 psi higher tyre pressure front and rear as well, so they've kept the balance in it from last year, if you like, a little bit. But there's a lot going on. We've already here on some of the radio comms of people being asked to pit because the tyres have got too hot, so trying to cool that down again is a question mark, and I think particularly in the soft tyre they might struggle to get 2 laps out of it. But
you've also got, I know it's an anti-clockwise circuit and you've obviously got more left than right, but you've got a lot of right-hand corners in the middle part, which kind of gives the right side tyres a little bit of breathing room. You put a lot of energy through them through the first 5 corners, and then they get to relax a little bit. So it does kind of even out across the 4 tyres, I think.
It's a brilliantly designed track, and that's why it provides such great racing here. 10 left, 5 right in terms of the amount of corners. I would say, though, at least 2 of those left, maybe 3, not really corners at all, are they?
One of the things I love about this track is when you stand in the pit lane or just to the end of the paddock building each side of the pit lane, you can see You can see the whole track. So where these cars are now, over that catch fence on the right, you can see down the whole track.
Lando Norris coming into the pits, Sergio Perez coming into the pits. There is not room for 2 cars to get past. It gets very narrow there, as Lando has just found out.
He sort of chased Checo around. I was watching them on that run. He was chasing Checo all the way around that lap. And I don't know if he's practicing just a bit of racing and trying to see what it's like in the dirty air, maybe. If it's up to him, he'd be up front and, you know, not having that problem.
It's surprising that Checo's going so slow on pit entry, and what I think the McLaren's trying to do there is the pit entry is quite tricky to get right here because you're coming quite quickly up that straight. It's not straight, but you're on full throttle up all of that, and there is a lot of time to be gained and lost here on pit entry, and the engineers of pit will be pushing the driver to practice that every single run.
Yeah, lock up, get to the, is it 60 kilometres an hour here?
80, I believe.
Oh, was it 80?
Yeah.
So get down to 80 kilometres an hour at that very last split second, and you might save yourself a few tenths. That could be the difference between getting out in front of your rival or behind. So Lando Norris, who's been following Sergio Perez around, followed him into the pits and thought, you know what, I'll try and overtake him so I can get to me garage a bit quicker, and found that it's quite narrow there and there's no chance that you can get 2 cars side by side coming into the pits, so he had to make way. Oscar Piastri at the car watching that from behind and watching his driver, Pete Bonington, race engineer for Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton currently second off his teammate George Russell. Russell's had the soft tyre on, Hamilton still going around on the medium. There's a lot of improvement to be had when you put those soft tyres on. Through the horseshoe Ferradura we go, place where Charles Leclerc went off on the formation lap, if you remember, last season.
Yeah, had a hydraulic failure,
That's
I think,
right,
wasn't it, that just sent him off. There's that wonderful statue of Ayrton Senna there in the background, which was unveiled, I think it was last year, by Paulina Senna, his niece, and who I bumped into yesterday. A big weekend for the Senna family.
Absolutely.
30 years on from that tragic weekend, of course, in Imola.
Absolutely. Right, Ted Kravitz, what have you got for us?
Down at McLaren, and it's not going quite as well as I think Lando Norris would have liked. They're now changing front wings. In fact, they've just put a different front wing on Lando's car. That front wing has just been in the pit lane for the whole session. Now Oscar is trying a different spec front wing as well. I think you can see coming onto Oscar's car. But let me show you this amazingly scooped rear wing, Crofty. And the way that McLaren describe it is that, can I read it to you, because it's quite good on the...
Fastest across the track every day.
We're going to hear a lot of this, aren't we? We're going to hear bumpy track and overheating tyres, I predict, at the end of this session. But McLaren described this new rear wing. They say, suitable to the isochronal of this circuit. Yes. Bernie, can you help? A new rear wing assembly has been designed, increasing overall wing efficiency over the existing medium downforce rear wing. But look at the scoop in the middle of it. And that leading edge is actually higher than the middle section. It's so deep, that scoop, that you could pour soup into the middle of it. It would hold your tomato soup, your cream of tomato soup, and you could eat soup, or drink it, out of that with your spoon, soup spoon, out of the middle of that rear wing. That's how scooped it is. It's quite incredible, and the most scooped out of any car in the pit lane. And I'm just wondering whether this is why McLaren was so secure in the ability, and they're happy to change their rear wing for Las Vegas if they knew that they had another medium downforce rear wing in the pipeline, because this is nice work, this new rear wing. All right, you could argue that Monza and Las Vegas would be low downforce compared to medium one. That's certainly an area they've been concentrating on. Isochronal, Bernie.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like one of the nights at a round table.
The
isochronal.
The isochronal. I did look it up, and it means occupying equal time. But I don't know what they quite mean, McLaren, in terms of due to the occupying equal time of this circuit.
I think it'll be the combination of speed of corners and the trade-off between downforce and drag that they need. You're obviously looking for a very efficient car where you can, but it'll be the trio of corners, so they're trying to maximise. Every corner individually would have a different downforce level, if you think of it like that. If you could change downforce every corner, you would.
Am I right in saying as well that Las Vegas is also quite a bit above sea level? Not as much as here and not as much as Mexico. So would that scoop be quite effective in kind of putting more downforce in without the penalty?
But I don't think they'd run that wing in Vegas anyway.
No?
It'd be too draggy in Vegas.
I would have thought so.
Yeah, but I just feel like it's a bit of a nod back to the Ron Dennis era where we're just going to come up with some really complicated words and get the paddock...
Confuse us.
Yeah, just get the paddock confused.
Franco Colapinto goes second fastest. Big difference between George Russell's time and Franco's time on those medium tyres.
Crowder liking that.
They certainly are. He is number 2 sportsman to Lionel Messi when it comes to the popularity. Yeah.
I know who that is. I jest.
He is the subject of my favourite joke on the planet. Why did the footballer tidy up his bedroom? Because it was messy. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. My kids hear that one far too often.
You are heading into granddad joke territory, you know this.
Yep.
You've gone beyond dad jokes.
Don't care. What I do care, though, is what Carlos Sainz is going to do on the soft compound tyres. Take it away, Mr. Chandok.
So he's done a 12.1 on the medium. We'll see how much improvement he can find on this. Rear of the car, a little bit of movement as he came out of the centre S around the Curva do Sol, dropping downhill towards...
Decido do Lago.
Decido do Lago, yes, thank you. I remember the second part. 0.05 down on Russell's time. Let's climb uphill. Bottas getting nicely out of the way around. Ferradura waving at Damon Hill. Car looks calm, doesn't it? He's just chasing. You always chase a bit of understeer through the first part before it sort of levels up and the road pops you up there. Now we'll come up to Bico de Pato there, the duckbill hairpin. This is where we saw him have the rear movement, the rear instability on the turn-in. No issue on the slab, down through Magulio. Slightly wide of the apex, just trying to use a line of resistance. But 3.5 tenths down on Russell, and on a time from Russell that, by the way, was done quite a while ago in terms of track evolution.
Ollie Behrman has just gone 14 thousandths of a second behind George Russell, and albeit with the caveat that there's about 10 minutes difference, or maybe a bit more. That's a super time from Ollie Behrman.
Yeah.
Faster than Carlos Sainz, faster as well than Alex Albon, who has the quickest first sector time that we've seen so far, and Franco Colapinto in 5th.
And this is a tough track. Honestly, coming as a complete rookie here from, as Behrman is, it is a tough track. There's lots of subtle cambers. There's lots of just, ways you need to attack the curbs and ride the curbs to just find a bit more rotation in the car. Piastri understeering wide, a little bit of the first apex. I would have compromised his run for the right-hander, and hence, I think, forced him off wide. So, yeah, I mean, that is super impressive from Behrman, I think.
Certainly is. Last 2 wins in F2, I think, for Ollie Behrman, were both sprint races as well. Not saying he's going to win this weekend. Red Bull Ring and Monza for Ollie there. Might enjoy himself in the sprint. He'd be used to the format, if not necessarily too used to the track. Here's Lando Norris next, and he is up through the first sector of this track. And let's just see through the middle sector how the McLaren copes with the part of this circuit, Karun, where it's not so much the making up of time, it's the not losing time during this bit.
Yeah, I think it is I mean, listen, it kind of all works out the same, but I think there is actually time to be gained, because I think often as a driver, psychologically, you kind of go, high-speed corners, that's where you feel like you're on the limit and like you're hanging on to it and it feels edgy, so you naturally spend a lot of time thinking about it, whereas you consciously have to force yourself to think, hang on a second, actually in these slow-speed corners, in percentage terms, if I could pick up 3 kilometers an hour at the apex at a third gear hairpin, that's a lot more than 3 kilometers an hour at a high-speed corner. So I think there is time to be had in that middle sector, same as Monaco. Actually, people don't often think about that middle sector, but there's a lot of time there.
My right elbow's getting caught on duct tape.
If that happened to me, it would pull all the hair off and hurt a lot.
That could be hugely painful for yourself. Lando Norris ended up behind Ollie Behrman. Ollie Behrman, by the way, is about 6/10 up on his teammate Nico Hulkenberg, previous pole sitter here before. Fernando Alonso goes 6th fastest. That's a decent lap time for Fernando Alonso, ahead of Charles Leclerc, who's put in a soft tyre run too.
I think Hulkenberg's just starting his run, though, isn't he?
No, Hulkenberg did do a soft tyre run.
Oh wow, okay. So we'll see. Sergio Perez. So this is a big lap for Perez, isn't it, Crofty? We've seen him doing the donkey work so far on the mediums. This is his first run, first hit on the softs with only 4 minutes to go. So Red Bull leaving it late for him here. Pretty clean run through the Senna S. DRS popping open now, we'll see. So Alex Albon actually has the best first sector, and the first sector is really about straight line speed, isn't it? It's the run up to the Senna S, the run through the S, but this is where we start to see the differences. Most people are kind of doing similar first sector times, and then the divergence starts to happen here.
Max Verstappen's just come out as well. We'll see his time in a moment. Alex Albon keeps out of the way for Sergio Perez. Never finished on the podium here before, has Sergio. Plenty of times to do that. 12 starts. Although, of course, he could well have finished on the podium last year, but he got frustrated, he got bogged down, he got held up by Fernando Alonso, and in the photo finish, just missed out in his middle sector. Not good.
No, way down. I didn't see if there was an obvious mistake, but yeah, really a long way down. I mean, I think with these high track temperatures, up to 57 now, I wonder if there's an element, Bernie, of the soft tire getting overloaded, overheated, and just you start to get that movement, don't you? If it gets too hot, you just start to get some movement on the soft tire.
Yeah, I was just going to see if there's anything interesting that you wanted to talk through this, Corinne, but a lot of traffic. That is a struggle at the end of these sessions. That's often why people like Russell do the run a bit earlier on when the track is quiet. Get your ideal lap in, get the learning done that you need, because making your way through that traffic is particularly difficult in that midsection with, like you say, people on a big variety of run plans.
Right, let's see how Verstappen gets on.
I don't think we've seen Lewis on a set of softs, have we? So Mercedes have split the program there. Left Lewis on a set of mediums all the way through. Verstappen's up, though, on the first sector. But as I was saying before, this middle part of the lap is where we need to see. He's got Leclerc, who will move out of the way, so that's good news, as Piastri just behind there, we saw on the top of shot. So let's have a look at the middle sector, Crofty.
So middle sector for Max Verstappen, who goes into the sprint this weekend having won 11 of the 16 sprints that we've had so far in Formula One. If his race pace in the Grand Prix is not where he wants it, in a sprint, little or no problem whatsoever. 18.1 for the first sector for Max Verstappen. It's a 36.2 for the middle sector, which is still pretty competitive. He's on course to be up there around Russell, Behrman and Norris.
Oh, he's back out of it.
And he's backed out.
So maybe he doesn't want to show his full lap time, but the teams will all have, as Bernie knows, GPS data. They'll be poring over that until they get to Junsao. Piastri does finish his lap and end up, was it about a 10th, just over a 10th away from Norris's time.
Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, 6th fastest for the man who was on pole in Mexico last weekend, stays 6th fastest with that latest lap. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you're not improving too much on a second lap, even with 1 or 2 cool downs in between.
Yeah, I think the second lap maybe on the soft tyre is going to be a struggle. The track temperature's still rising, you know, nearly 57 now. Will continue to rise as we get towards sprint this afternoon, and then should drop throughout that. Just to pick up on one thing that Corinne said there with Hamilton having not run the soft tyre, the reason that a few teams we see out there haven't done that is they only have 6 for this weekend. So they need 1.
How much you in a bit of pain, mate? How much longer we got? It'll be 1 more lap when you cross the line.
Wow. We'll send Ted down to Mercedes and try and get the latest on that one. Lando Norris fastest in the first sector. Bernie, carry on.
Yeah, I was just to pick up on that. Lewis is on his 11th lap of that medium, you know, sort of doing more long run, a bit more learning on that. But yes, they've only got 6 sets of soft tyre. They need 1 for sprint Q3 this afternoon. They need 4 or 5 for actual qualifying on Saturday afternoon. And then I don't think we're going to see it in the sprint race or the main race, but those qualifying sessions, although it's easy to overtake here, potentially saving the soft for that. That has, I believe, had him over in the past with not having to learn on that soft tyre for this afternoon.
You use it first time getting into SQ3 and it's a bit of a shock. Lando Norris goes fastest by a couple of tenths from George Russell. He did get a faster lap out of his second lap.
He did, yeah, but I'm trying to see, Coffee, if he didn't, maybe, I don't know, did he not do a full push lap? Because he's done a 2:21 cool, and yeah, so he's just done a very slow cool lap, hasn't he? He's done an extraordinary.
He's done 2 cool laps. He did push, double cool, and then he's on his push lap.
It's worth pointing out here, Ollie Behrman, who this time yesterday didn't even know he was going to be driving in the car, has just gone third fastest, quickest overall on the straights, and the difference between himself and Nico Hülkenberg at round about 0.3 of a second.
I mean, if he wasn't going to be doing the main qualifying in the Grand Prix, he's got to be now, hasn't he?
Well, that is a terrific performance from the youngest driver in the field, a 19-year-old, who's given us a couple of really terrific performances in Grand Prix, and will be going to race in his first sprint in Formula One tomorrow after qualifying later today. He's a pretty handy reserve driver to have around, isn't he? George Russell, his time stacked up really well, the 1:10.7 for the man who won the sprint, and then the Grand Prix, of course, here in 2022. And Lando Norris, the man who's making a habit of getting pole position at the moment, 4 poles in the last 6 Grand Prix, taking the top spot. Just looking elsewhere, Verstappen did 1 run on the soft compound tyre, aborted it, didn't finish the lap. Thank you very much, Guru Chandler. We'll see you in a moment. Hamilton didn't get on the soft tyre at all, and they get to do what I think, Bernie Collins, is a really important practice start on the grid here, because it is such an uphill start for some that you need to get things absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and you know, the TV, we speak a lot about the TV not doing the change and undulation of the track justice, but this is definitely one that it doesn't. So a few things about this grid, Crofty. The ones towards the front of the grid's uphill. So the grid's slightly uphill. The ones towards the back of the grid's slightly downhill. And the people at the back of the grid, there's actually rain lines, there's rain grooves in the tarmac. I've not actually checked to put it in with this redone tarmac, but there used to be rain drainage grooves, so actually it's like, you know, it's like there's not fully grip there on those final grid positions.
Lewis Hamilton, 2 seconds.
That was one bumpy ride. Wow.
Certainly looked like it. Was it the bumps that was causing Lewis Hamilton pain, Ted? Yeah.
So you're coming up to take the checkered flag. Could we have a CSL 6 after turn 3, please? So that's 6th gear, 200 Ks.
Yeah, second lap was basically better entry stability, but a lot of understeer mid corner, so
okay,
that didn't help.
Lando Norris, his bumps
was
would worth it
ride.
a little bit more because he had the fastest time. But just under 0.2 from George Russell. Oliver Behrman in the top 3, deputising for Kevin Magnussen for the sprints definitely, and the Grand Prix potentially. Gasly and Alonso, Hülkenberg all making their way into the top 10. But Verstappen didn't do a full lap on the soft compound tyre, so his best lap was on the medium. Lewis Hamilton didn't put the softs on at all. Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda both getting their best laps on the mediums. They started the session on the softs, then went to the mediums towards the end. And Sergio Perez down in 19th, changed his chassis, hasn't necessarily improved his fortunes in the practice session. Sprint qualifying to come next. That's where it gets important.